Good evening, everyone. This is Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live once again from Fredericksburg, Texas. And tonight, tonight is Sunday night AstroLive, and we wouldn't be having the Sunday night AstroLive show if it weren't for this guy right here, Jasper the Astro Cat, checking in early tonight, aren't we, Jasper? Getting a front row seat. Come on in. The weather is beautiful here in Texas, beautiful here in the studio, in the worldwide headquarters of the 11th house. The 11th house at the 11th hour, or so it seems at times, doesn't it? I've just got to answer a quick text. And hold on. It's on right now. People want to know, Robert, where the hell are you? Yeah, that's right. They wonder, don't they? They wonder, don't they? Oh, let's see. What do we have here? Let me make sure I've got the right G's. G's. And you got the 5Gs, right, Jasper? Oh, it's okay. Internet connection is fine. Let's go. There we go. The 2Gs and the 5G. So we're plugging into the 5G circuits. You guys want to say hi to Jasper tonight? Right there with Cat Cam. Jasper Cat Cam. There he is. Right there. Get your dose of Jasper. That's right. Well, let's see. Who's happy March, by the way. Welcome to March. We've been in Pisces now for since the 21st. So good 10 days. We're still in the retrograde. Boy, do I have a absolutely great Mercury retrograde kind of a sync example for you. You're not going to want to miss it. Trust me on this. It's not really long, but it's something that has, I would say, a high degree of Schadenfreude, if you know what that means. Okay, let's see what we have here. We've got Eagles and Steve. Hey, what's going on, Steve? There's Joan S. and Zero Hedge. And hi, Kathy. Nice to see you. There's Judy. Alex Silva. What's happening? And let's see. There's Isla Wren. What's happening, Isla Wren? So I just want to make a quick announcement here. I'm going to make a kind of a more formal announcement on Monday. But some of you might know that Steve Mercer, who is one of the moderators in the chat room, is also the producer of the Freeman Show. And Steve and I have been talking, and Steve's going to be helping me produce the Friday show, the Friday Farcast. And Freeman, of course, being a cool guy and being kind of a free man, said, okay, Steve, I don't have a problem with you working with Robert. So Steve's going to be helping out on Fridays and bringing really intriguing guests on. Steve's really dialed in to interesting people with interesting ideas, interesting content. So looking forward to a nice, steady stream of compelling interviews and content moving forward. So give Steve a high five in the chat room. I'm really psyched and grateful that he wants to be a part of this, so that we can continue to build and bring you guys everything you need on a spiritual, emotional, psychological level, any level at all. We're here for you. Full service. Tonight it's about astrology, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about astrology, looking at the chart of the moment. I'm going to try to avoid a lot of talk about coronavirus, but I do want to talk about it in the context of where we're headed with the nodes and the nodal shift, which is going to be taking place in May, which is not that far from now. So let me just check in with you guys in Chatlandia. And let's see, we got Ginger. Hi, Ginger. And Rob Chopra, bring Larry Johnson Jr. Rob, you like Larry. You're a Larry guy. You're a Larry guy. I have to say, I don't find Larry Johnson all that compelling. That's just me. I don't find him compelling. If you want to find somebody along those lines that has some interesting things to say in that world, you got to check out Chronicles of Judah 144. over on YouTube. In fact, I think Larry Johnson caught a lot of his stuff from Chronicles of Judah and started snatching that stuff up from him. But interesting young guy and a very, very truth oriented. He's not into astrology at all. I think Larry's okay. I just think, like, I remember when Larry Johnson was playing for the Kansas City Chiefs and watching him, right? I was watching him because I'm a football fan, playing fantasy football, and he came after this guy named Priest Holmes, who was from University of Texas and fantastic running back. And I had Priest Holmes on my fantasy team one year, and I really crushed a lot of people. So I was like, once he left, like, who's this Larry Johnson guy? And Larry actually had 2 really good seasons for Kansas City, and then they were on what was it? Hard Knocks. The Chiefs were on Hard Knocks. So I saw another side of Larry Johnson. He's very artistic. He's actually quite a good painter. That was one of the things. It was one of the behind the scenes with Larry Johnson, and he was a very, very good painter. And you could tell he was a complex personality. Now at that time, he was being represented. I think he was one of Jay-Z's first sports clients, Rock Nation's first sports clients. So he was spending a lot of time with Jay-Z. And while he was playing during that period, his career went to hell. Now, I know that they used him a lot, gave him a lot of carries. He used meaning the Chiefs, but I also watched Larry Johnson make some really, really dumb moves during that time. Like he was, I think he got into it with a woman, and there was like, kind of like that weird assault and battery stuff going on with him during that time. Like he made some very bad moves, and he was inside with Jay-Z and inside with Rock Nation. And if you go into a lot of the hip hop message boards, which are brutal, they're absolutely ruthless. And you go into those message boards and they start talking about Larry Johnson and Jay-Z. It's not very, how do I say this? It's not very becoming or respectful. Let's put it that way. With this not so underlying message and theme that Larry Johnson and Jay-Z were more than just management and client. Let's put it that. And that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. I just wish he would come clean with it. That's all. Like if he were on the show, I would definitely ask him about that. I'd ask him about his relationship with Jay-Z during that time. And, how close was it? And if it was that close, and what is he trying to do? Is he trying to cleanse himself and purge himself? Just in case you don't know who Larry Johnson is, he was a professional running back, and he's been somebody who's been a quote unquote whistleblower, what's going on behind the scenes. And he knows a lot because he was there. He went to the parties, he went to the initiations. That much I think is pretty clear. And then his career went to hell in a handbasket very quickly. He made the wrong choice of management. His dad, by the way, is a longtime college coach and very well respected. So he comes from a football family. I'd have him on. Maybe Steve can work on. I'll tell you, I'd really like to have on. I'd like to have Ricky Williams on the show. Ricky's an astrologer now, another running back, kind of very complicated guy. 0 degrees Gemini, and I hung out with Ricky in Austin at the Austin Astrological Society night with Ricky Williams, and he gave a great talk. And now he's really devoted his life to astrology. Ricky's a Gemini, jack of all trades. He's got his fingers in the pie with Ayurveda, with massage, with Vedic philosophy. But he's a straight Western evolutionary astrologer, having worked with Stephen Forrest. I'd like to have Ricky on. I connected with Ricky. I really like Ricky. And I gave him my card, and I haven't heard from him. He's a Gemini. Guys doing all kinds of things. But maybe I'll reach out to Russ and Shannon at the Austin Astrological Society, and maybe they can get me in touch with him. I think he's doing a workshop right there in Austin, a 3-day workshop. So, and by the way, Russell von Oldhausen, who is part of that group, has a very nice article up on astro.com on the astrology and the Fibonacci sequence. Russ is a very super intelligent guy. He's a Gemini. Geminis love to do shit like that, right? Get into all that fractal stuff. I should have Russ on too. He's got some very interesting theories around astrology and twins, and of course, I'm always interested in that stuff. But Jasper is really asserting his cat will tonight. He's really asserting his cat will. So I'm doing everything. This is really interesting. Maybe I'm in some kind of like multitasking training program that maybe Jasper's initiating me into some kind of multitasking training program, or he's just being a pain in the ass cat. I think maybe it's a little bit of both. So I can somehow maintain my focus. You see, how many people really could continue to have a conversation about astrology and kind of where tonight's show is going, and at the same time, pet their cat, make sure they don't destroy what semblance of order that the cat, well, semblance of order that the show has currently. I don't know. I'm not sure. I am not sure. But clearly, this is part of it. Jasper, I'm going to let go now, and I need you to just relax. Okay, he's got to make the computer his own. As soon as Jasper makes the computer his own, which he does every single time I'm on this show, by the way, you would think that by now he would have enough scent on this damn computer to not only think that it's his own, but Rosie's and every other cat who lives in every other household across this planet. He's like claiming it for catdom. Okay, I think he's done. I think he's asserted his furry dominance over the computer. We can continue. There we go. I'd like to have so Steve, there you go. Add Larry Johnson to the list. I'd ask Larry Johnson tough questions. I would. But I do think it's good that he's talking about these things because he's one of these fringe mainstream guys who was mainstream, but he was only mainstream for a couple of years. If he played longer, he'd have more impact. That's for damn sure. All right. So what are we talking about tonight? We're talking about astrology. Astrology. I got the chart of the moment lined up. Let me see what we have here. So, we can go back and look at last week. Remember I said Wednesday was going to be kind of a big deal? That's when Trump did his presser around COVID-19. So that's where we are right now. And that was kind of an interesting flashpoint because it was the first time he said anything. And he was drafting Mike Pence. Now, I guess this is Mike Pence's operation. So let's just look at the nodes here. So I want to talk about the nodes, and we can even see what happened with the Trump presser, how revealing it was. So before Trump did the press conference, before Trump really came out and made a statement on coronavirus. Now, remember, Trump is a Gemini with the Sun-Uranus conjunction. He was not doing enough. And Chuck Schumer seems like he's been around forever. Don't a lot of these people just seem like they've been around forever? Or is it really just that it's a function of time or whatever non-time that we're in? I mean, it just seems like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Lindsey Graham, all these people have been around for fucking ever. Like, when are they going to leave? When are they going to leave? Anyway, Trump said, Schumer said that Trump wasn't doing enough with the borders and quarantines and closing people off. And then Trump responds by shutting down parts of, I think he hasn't shut down the border yet, but he was definitely shutting flights down. Right? It was he was bringing back that flight list. It's not the same one, obviously, because it was really geared towards every other country in the Middle East besides Israel and Saudi Arabia. but he was like bringing back this kind of flight manifest, and these flights weren't going to come in. So now he's taking a hard line stand. And then Chuck Schumer comes around and says, "Oh, well, that's really racist. That's very racist, and it's not being. You're not honoring the humanity and the compassion that's needed in a crisis." So, I mean, you can't win for losing in that world, and it's there in a lot of ways to drive the rest of us batshit corona crazy. But again, bringing this back to the true node, what we can see, and what I'm going to kind of get into now. So I kind of dropped the needle on corona and how I see it at the very least playing out from a certain astrological perspective. At the end of May, our little friend here, the true node, which is the ascending plane of the moon in the final degrees of Cancer, very, very protective, very, very emotional, very feminine. What else? Very nurturing. Like if you're going to have a medical crisis, the true node in Cancer and staying home and quarantining yourself would actually be a really good aspect. Although I don't think it certainly doesn't come to that, and I don't think it will come to that. But what we can see here is that and this has been something I've been talking about for the last, well, I've been talking about it for a while on this show, but you can find out kind of what's going to happen just before a major aspect occurs or a major transit occurs. Like, for instance, we've got Saturn in Capricorn in the final degrees. We have Aquarius here just on the horizon. So what does Aquarius represent? It represents communications, technology. I would say that 5G technology fits inside of the Aquarian bucket, by the way. It also represents groups and organizations. And of all the signs, Aquarius represents the collective more than any other sign. So when we talk about the collective, we talk about collectivism. We talk about socialism, communism, social democracy, communitarianism. It also, Aquarius tends to be a bit extreme. And we can also have dialogue or debates around things like fairness versus extremism, all those wonderful kinds of Aquarian topics. So one of the things that we're obviously seeing is we're seeing kind of this rise in Bernie Sanders and his social democratic perspective, politics, point of view. Now, remember, we did Sanders' chart last week where he has Saturn-Uranus conjunction, which is, again, the kind of the embodiment of the Iranian perspective or the Iranian philosophy and ideology, and it being bolted to Saturn, which would be mainstream, which would be sort of the how do I say this? The topographical forces of hierarchy and control. So he has that in his chart. And whether or not we actually have Bernie Sanders as president, and I think it would take an act of God, and we'd probably get free energy first. Although you never know, man. There's so many weird things happening in the system that it would not be surprised at the very least if something highly unusual occurs with Sanders. And again, it's because of that Saturn-Uranus conjunction in his chart, and we have Saturn getting ready to move into the sign of Aquarius, and Uranus being the ruler of Aquarius. So we're going to see more and more stories and more narrative around social democracy, socialism, and communism. I don't think it's going to happen over the next 3 years, but it is going to ramp up, and we're hearing it right now. This is also going to be kind of the territory where the rollout of Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 begins to happen. Again, those are communitarian ideas. And this is what Aquarius represents. And with Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, not only are they communitarian ideas, but the Smart Cities program is built on the back of smart technology. So we're talking about things like smart meters. Obviously, they're in place everywhere now. And the smart meters piggybacking on smart appliances, and the smart appliances communicating through the smart meters, giving the power stations real time information on your usage, and to some extent, probably even what you're doing. I mean, not only do we have refrigerators and washing machines and dryers and all these other appliances that are supposedly smart, a lot of willing fools have put these systems in their house, like Nest or Echo or any of the other so-called surveillance systems linked up with Alexa as well. So now we have this kind of interstitial reality in this network that is being essentially it's being passed along on the smart grid network system, and of course that's going to be fired and powered by 5G, and we're already encountering theoretically some real issues with 5G. And again, we're seeing this right at the end of Saturn and Capricorn. And so the next sign begins to reveal itself at the final degrees of the sign that it's in. When we talk about this coronavirus, COVID-15, of course, people who have dove into that have noted that 5G was being rolled out in Wuhan. The Chinese, by the way, were hoping to use 5G as part of the One Belt, One Road system that would allow them to transact with real-time currency along the way. And one of the currencies that was theoretically being talked about to be used with that, we're talking digital currency, a cryptocurrency, was Ripple XRP. So what's happened, and so that's what the Chinese were really working on, was this incredibly fast rollout for 5G that would allow them to essentially power their One Belt, One Road initiative all the way from China through North Africa, through the Middle East, through Central Asia, through Russia, all the way into Central Europe and Western Europe, and extending, by the way, not just over land, but via seaports, and working with countries like Venezuela, for instance. We talked about this before, in how Venezuela and China have worked together to create a universal ID card that stores all your biometric information on it. So what's really interesting is that in Wuhan, which of course is where the coronavirus emerged from theoretically, is that's where they were rolling out the 5G technology in a big way, because in order for China to be able to map it out and model it out on One Belt, One Road, of course they'd have to link up China, because that's where they could figure out how far apart the MIMOs, which are the 5G transmitters, need to be, because 5G doesn't travel very far. 5G has a very short spectrum frequency, so you've got to place all the 5G transmitters together, transponders together, close together. So they were working that stuff out in China, obviously, and being connected to coronavirus, or theoretically coronavirus, we've seen perhaps a mutation of something that might normally be just a regular old darn flu or cold, although I have some ideas that that's probably not the case. But again, what are we talking about? We're talking about the impact of this technology theoretically on the system. Also, these cruise ships, the Princess Cruises, again, they were supposedly outfitted with 5G all throughout the ship. So is there a connection? Well, we're talking about 5G, aren't we? Whether there's a connection or not. I can tell you right now, you've got 5G running through most of your Wi-Fi routers. So it's in your home, and it's going to be ubiquitous. But that's part of the discussion here. And we can see this as just one sliver of where things are headed as we move from Saturn in Capricorn to Saturn in Aquarius. and also the social model as well, right? Because when you bring together Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, the Smart Cities Initiative, the Green Cities program, and you bring in the 5G technology and all the other wonderful appliances that jump right in. Now we're having kind of a full saturation of what Saturn and Aquarius could very well look like. And even from the social perspective. Now, I don't think we're going to get socialism or communitarianism anywhere in the next 3 years, but I do believe that when we roll around to 2024, we have the next election. This is not going to go away. And a lot of the young socialists who were actually trained by Bernie Sanders through his campaign will be at a position and an age in their life where they'll be able to theoretically run for president. And historically, when Saturn and Neptune get together, which they will under the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Pisces, there tends to be more of a historical precedent for these, how do I say this, communistic or socialistic tendencies. We saw this, if I'm not mistaken, see Saturn in Virgo would have been, let's see, about 6, 8, 9 years. So it would have been right at Saturn in Pisces. Just trying to think, and that would have been 12 years after. So it would have been 1978, right around there. I'll have to go back and look. So let's go back up here because I was just giving an example of how we can see the reality of the new energy from a particular sign interpenetrating and showing us what we can see in the future as this sign, Capricorn, begins to phase out. Same thing is happening here as the true node in Cancer is really right in that very sweet spot of the first decan. And we can again see that there are these multiple realities taking place, right? And the coronavirus is definitely one of those flashpoints. It's a big nothing burger. Don't worry about it. Big nothing burger. Got nothing to worry about. Just go about your business. Yeah, this happens. There was SARS and there was MERS and there was the bird flu and there are all these other things. And it happens once every time there's an election cycle. We get a big super bug. Don't worry about it. It's just one side trying to manipulate the other, create fear, go on with your life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, okay, that's one reality. And I will say that there's some validity to that reality, especially the don't worry about it part. But I would say don't worry about it from an informed place, because then you can choose not to worry about it or not, right? You can choose not to worry about it, or you can, if you're informed, depending on what your information has to share with you. Now, there are other people who have gone down the rabbit hole, and they're looking at what's happening in Italy. There are no soccer matches in Italy. Could that be contrived? Well, maybe. The Pope has been coughing up a storm and has not been able to address the public. Is that contrived? Well, maybe. Supposedly, there is a high death rate in Iran. Is that contrived? Is that part of the big global Ponzi scheme? Well, again, you're starting to see a lot of different moving pieces. And if this is a psyop, it's a psyop on a level that we've never seen before. Okay, just keep that in mind. But I'm not here to tell you whether or not you should be in fear mode or respectfully aware of the conditions, or just, pull an Alfred E. Newman and say, what me worry. But what I do want to point out is that there are two very intense competing versions of reality that are coming at us. And that's not going to end. That is not going to end. We're going to have more and more of that. And I talked about this before. I talked about this a week ago, maybe a week before that, so that people can begin to understand that this is kind of where things are headed. And the best thing to do, or the best position to have, would be able to be fluid and be able to hop from kind of one perspective to another, while at the same time retaining some level of center Now, the challenging part with the nodes is, remember now, when the true node in May, the end of May, moves into Gemini at 29, the south node will be in Sagittarius. And there can be a significant sacrifice for people in general when we sacrifice some level of the truth for some instantaneous mental or informational gratification. The truth, wisdom, some form of authenticity and morality, definitely taking a backseat. Definitely taking a backseat. It's going to be very interesting, to say the least. Try to be nimble. I think being nimble and being able to dance on the head of a pin is probably your best strategy. Be nimble, be mobile if you can. Market took a huge hit, and excuse me, that would, to me, would be very much in alignment with what we've been seeing here with Uranus, and Uranus getting into heavy duty square mode this last week. Uranus moving forward finally 3 degrees in Taurus, and we can look down here. We've got Uranus in a square with Saturn, and to me, that is the marketplace, and we're going to see more and more of this disruption occurring, and we talked about that last week as well. So as Saturn moves more into Aquarius, gets more into that tight square, I think it's going to be very turbulent, because when we deal with Taurus, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with assets and resources, hard assets, hard resources. Uranus represents the electrification of those hard assets and hard resources. So what we know about the stock market, if we're really paying attention, is it's driven by algorithms, the deus ex machina, the ghost in the machine. And it's been trending upwards for the last 3 years, which has supported Trump greatly in a lot of ways. But now we had, really people said, well, it was a correction. It was a $7 trillion correction. So if you were shorting the market on the whispers of coronavirus, good news for you. You just did really, really well. I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. And apparently the Dow futures are up, so we may see a bit of an upswing with the Dow futures. I mean, if you really want to go all diabolical, right? I mean, super, super diabolical, like really fucking diabolical. Like, you could look at this whole thing with Corona as a staged event to wipe out that $7 trillion top of the market and short the market in a way more advanced and insidious way, in the same way that certain people profited off of shorting the stock of both American Airlines and United Airlines pre 9/11. This would be a much more grandiose and ambitious effort on someone's part, or someone's parts. That could be quite possible, because remember, if somebody's losing money and somebody's taking a loss, somebody else somewhere is profiting. And now we've got a kind of a rise in the futures market, or the Dow futures. But again, we'll see what happens. I don't think that this is going to stabilize anytime soon. Like, the Saturn is going to be in square with Uranus now. God, probably until middle of 2022, when it begins to separate a bit from it. And they're going to be kind of, dancing with each other in this square. One of the theories about coronavirus, and I tend to agree with this, is that it is also igniting this idea of not using money, right? So we all talk about the reset, and everybody's got a kind of a different version of what the reset is, financial reset, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this could be a very clear indicator that this notion of paper money and the fiat currency in the Federal Reserve would be coming to an end, because this would be this forced radical revision over how we've been doing things in the past. Now, remember, this aspect or these planets in the sign of Capricorn represent sort of the apex of things like big business, big government, big banking, big. And now we have Uranus disrupting all of that. In China, they were burning money because they thought that the coronavirus was crawling all over their money. I know people that have gone out and purchased Apple Pay cards because they don't want to use money. Do you see what's happening here? We're already being entrained in some ways to begin to think beyond money and physical money. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be a safe haven or safe harbor for cryptocurrencies. I think cryptocurrencies are going to go through their own trial and their own troubles and their own issues as the forces of Sauron or Saturn move forward and want to crack that vault open, crack it open. Now, the worst case scenario here, absolute worst case scenario, is that the markets do not recover, that the supply chain and the distribution chain from China will be broken, and we'll find out. I mean, we will find out within the next 45 to 60 days if that will occur. Now, again, you have to ask yourself, is this true? Now we're back up here with the true node approaching the sign of Gemini. Is it true? Is it really broken? Is this China's way of fucking the United States over because the United States renegotiated these trade tariffs with China? I mean, again, what's the picture of reality going to be like? Oh, look at that. We got Moon and Gemini tonight. A really good time to be able to like bat this thing around. Oh, pun not intended, even though the coronavirus supposedly comes from a bat. It's a different kind of bat. So this is what we've got now. Very interesting dynamic with Saturn-Uranus square. Very interesting dynamic. And we saw again that it was interesting. Instead of, they would say that when the U.S. sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. Well, it seems to be that if China sneezes and coughs and hacks, the rest of the world catches pneumonia, metaphorically speaking. These are going to be very, very interesting times. Very interesting times. I don't think the realm of investment is radioactive yet, but I think you're going to have to vet your investments and be proactive. Like, what are the things that are going to be important and popular over the course of the next 1 to 2 years? And there are people who will get involved in genomics with things like vaccines and antibiotics and all the typical kind of medical stuff. Because let's just say, for instance, they're able to corral the corona, and it's maybe not a big nothing burger, but a medium or small nothing burger. Do you think that will be the last of these viruses that will come around? Probably not. So there's always going to be a market for whatever so-called emergency or crisis will arise, and of course, the companies that will have the antidotes to these viruses will profit greatly. And even if they say like, oh well, we're very close to a trial for this virus, that could send the stock price through the roof. So, to be honest with you, even though most of you probably out there despise vaccines, and in many cases with very good reasons, by the way, that's where the money's going to be made. And also, what other kinds of potential pieces that could be very impactful? For instance, what kind of surfaces or polymers or materials could be used that would be sort of, have an antiviral component built into them so that viruses could even die on contact. I mean, things like that. You want to look at those kinds of emerging industries, which I think are there. They are definitely there. Another thing that you want to look at, and I'm going to give you guys some insider trading info, and that's kind of way out there, okay? But it really comes into the Saturn in Aquarius rubric. And I ran across some information this week, and I don't want to really get into my source, but I ran across some information this week where there's a very strong possibility, because the petroleum and the oil future, the oil and petroleum, not dividends, but the pork that the government hands out to the oil and petroleum industry is going to be, it's coming up, and it's going to be stopped, and it's going to be removed, which is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big deal. So the money that oil, petroleum, gas, big coal have been getting in terms of subsidies, apparently that's going away. So I'm giving you kind of a heads up. Now, why is that? Because the Trump administration apparently is getting ready to invest big in renewable. And that actually makes sense. That makes some sense. And I'll tell you why. Number one, I think that's something that his daughter would love. She could go back to her friends in New York and say, "Oh yeah, we're really getting into renewables now, right?" And I think that's something that also Jared Kushner, from his demographic, would push. And I also think that it would be something that Trump could use as a bridge and a platform for his kids to be elected, quite possibly either Don Jr. or Ivanka. So it's not just him, but setting himself up for his daughter and his son to be able to ride on that platform. Excuse me. And there could also be some major deals going on and taking place. I'm wanting to undercut people like Bernie Sanders or some of the green Democrats. So it's almost like heading them off the pass. I would actually look into those. I would look into those industries. I'd look into those companies that have some kind of a renewable energy focus and moving away from the dependency on petroleum-based fuel. Here in Texas, they're going to start to roll out driverless trucks. You see where all this is going? They're going to start to roll out the driverless truck system, less labor force, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something you may want to look at as kind of an investment opportunity. I don't think oil will go away or petroleum will go away overnight, but in order to stave off the critics and to be able to build in younger voters, long-term voters, that this is going to be the movement that's going to be made. Okay. We're also, all right. So here we have the moon in Gemini. We finally have some air. We finally have some air in our chart. Oh, real quick, before I move on to this, a really interesting development occurred over the last few days. I talk a lot about a guy by the name of Paul Singer, and he has a company called, his company has been dubbed. What is it? Elliott? Is it Elliott? I think it's Elliott. That's his hedge fund. But he's been dubbed a vulture capitalist. And he makes Mitt Romney look like a Boy Scout on a weekend getaway, looking for things like birds' nests and rabbits' feet out in the so-called wilderness. Paul Singer is a serious serious capitalist cannibal, and he just bought a long. Well, he bought a majority share of Twitter. Okay, so this is one of Donald Trump's most ardent financial supporters. Talk about the true node going into Gemini. Paul Singer, the guy that absolutely destroyed Cabela's, is now coming in to bring the wrecking ball to Twitter. And that means that Jack Dorsey's days at Twitter are numbered. And if I was Jack Dorsey, I would be up at night losing some sleep because Paul Singer is gunning for him. And that also means that the social ecology of Twitter will change as well as Paul Singer comes in to take care of business. So that's something to keep your eye on. Again, that's a tech thing, right? So we have a tech thing. We have Uranus here in Taurus. We have Saturn coming in and then putting a hard wrench to Uranus. And Paul Singer is definitely a Saturnian character. He's a 28 degree Leo. 28 degree Leo. All right, so let's get into some more of the chart of the moon. We finally have some air. Thank God, coming up for a little bit of air, because last week it felt like we were really kind of asphyxiated in the corona envelope in a lot of ways. Like it was very heavy last week. Very, very heavy. I think it was it Friday when the moon was in Taurus? And my good friend Regina put up a hot post on Facebook. And then, boy, people started to come out. I didn't even really look at the post. I'll be honest, because there are times where to me, it's just like a mob frenzy. It's like a mob frenzy. It's like throwing chum off the side of the boat when you're out in the ocean, and all the sharks come up and show up and start to just feast on the bloody chum. So unless it's something really, really intense and impactful, I try to stay away from stuff like that. I really do. I think peace of mind is really important. And apparently there was some guy that was bad mouthing me, and he he compared me to Alex Jones, and that I was quite dangerous, and that I was using astrology to forward my point of view. Show me an astrologer that doesn't have any bias. Okay, maybe Jasper. Jasper doesn't have any bias. We all have bias, but I do attempt to be fair. But I have seen things cyclically and astrologically that I cannot unsee. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. We had the moon in Taurus, and of course, Regina happens to be a Taurus rising, so she was going through some lunacy on her page, and I hope she's okay, because she took a lot of fire and she took a lot of heat. And I think the reason why she got apparently so cooked about it is because it was all happening very close to where she lives. And I think that when those things start to occur and you look around, you go, oh, gee, that's happening right down the block. Why the fuck couldn't they have done better? That maybe, just maybe, it might evoke a dramatic response. Anyway, she's tough. She's a professional. I'm sure she'll bounce back. But we're finally getting some air now, because, when that post happened, we had the moon in Taurus. There's no air. We're just kind of, it's really funny too, right? Because even when you think about something like coronavirus, one of the factors is, or one of the symptoms is that people have a really hard time breathing. It's coughing, deep cough, deep cough, deep cough. So, I mean, even astrologically, right? We had no air last week. And then we have people that are fighting for their breath. They're on respirators. They're on ventilators, and heavy. So now we finally have some air coming in, and maybe we can all take a big, deep breath and breathe from a different perspective. Now, that said, the only other change we're going to get here over the next few days is Mercury moving retrograde and going back into Aquarius, which it will. And it's going to station at 28 degrees, which is a very interesting station. It's going to kind of flatline, and that's going to be kind of a moment of non-time in some ways. It'll be a very interesting time. And then it's going to move forward again to 29, and then 0, and then we're back in water world, and we're not going to get really any more air until finally towards the end of the month in March. Saturn finally moves into Aquarius, and we'll get some air, but it's heavy air. It's not expansive air. It's not like Jupiter in Aquarius air. It's Saturn in Aquarius air. It's like, you're going to get permission to breathe with Saturn in Aquarius, that sort of thing. And even again, squaring off against Uranus. So this idea of breath and atmosphere, it being really kind of at a, how do I say this, a kind of a bare minimum. I mean, look at that right there, right? There's no air. There's no air out there. That's going to be going on for a while. The only respite we have is the retrograde into Aquarius, and then Saturn into Aquarius. But even then, it goes back into Capricorn in late spring, so mid-late spring. So even that's going to be temporary. We're not going to get any real air or action with air until finally Mars moves into Aquarius. And that's going to be when? It's going to be the end of March. It's right around the end of March, the first week of March. Of course, it's going to conjunct Saturn. That should be real fun. The Saturn-Mars conjunction at the final degrees of Capricorn and the beginning of Aquarius. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of power being asserted during that time. And again, square with Uranus. We've got some days and weeks to get through here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just telling you that right now. I'm being straight up. And we're going to have Mars in Aquarius, and that's radical energy. Mars in Aquarius is fucking radical. It's like people that are trying to break out of something so they can breathe. I wonder if that's going to be connected to quarantines. I'm just curious around that, because this could be kind of a quarantine aspect. But again, we're going to have to go all the way out till really May, when the sun moves into Gemini, to really kind of get kind of more airflow. Venus will get there eventually. It's got to go all the way through Taurus before it gets to Gemini. And even when it gets to Gemini, we're going to get a Venus retrograde. So air is a tricky kind of element for us during the first part of 2020. And there's not enough of it in some ways. And when I say there's not enough of it, what am I really saying? I'm saying that everybody needs to step back and take a breath. Just don't do it next to somebody who's coughing. I'm sorry. It's just, air is constricted. Like, we're not breathing. And when we do breathe, there are a lot of people that are breathing in a very laborious fashion. Very, very, very laborious fashion. Let's see, what do we got? Sun coming up, conjunct Neptune. That's going to be confusing as hell, isn't it? We got a Sun-Neptune conjunction coming. That'll be interesting. So what is that? That's 7 days from now. Not quite Super Tuesday. So we're talking about Saturday. This weekend, this coming weekend. Wow. I mean, it could be really blissful. It's like, people might just get really shit-faced. Really, really shit-faced. It's like, fuck it, man. I can't take it anymore. All this corona shit. The Pope is hacking into human. That's another interesting story with the Pope, which we can talk about. Hacking into human, and the markets are going up and down. I lost my 401k. Fuck it. Let's get shit-faced. That could be a big shit-face moment next weekend. I mean, it could be kind of transcendent too. It could be very transcendent. I believe, what are we talking about? Moon and Leo. Oh, the new moon, the full moon. Oh boy, that'll be a trip. That'll definitely be a trip. Because right around that time, we're going to have the Sun-Neptune conjunction. Yikes. I would say probably may not be a good idea to get shit-faced. Not with the full moon in Virgo. You'd have to wake up the next day. And a full moon Virgo hangover would not be good. Not be good. Take my word for it on that one. Anyway, very interesting times. Don't forget to breathe. Breathing is essential. Work on your breath. I had two people on my show on Friday both Glenn and Rob, they both talked about breathing. Isn't that interesting? In a time where we don't have any air out there, Glenn was talking about the vasal, activating the vasal capacity and doing a series of breaths. Rob was talking about getting out into nature and sitting down by a tree and putting your hands on the ground and breathing through your palms. I'm a big proponent of pranayamic breathing to get your body metabolized, to get it fired up. So it's interesting that both of them were talking about breathing and breath during a time where we don't have a lot of air and during a time where fucking people are putting on respirators and ventilators. Go figure. Take some breaths. Take some very, very deep breaths and honor the air in there. Okay, let's see what we have going on with you guys. Oh, wait. What day is that? The 11th house. But the full moon? Okay, well, let's look at it. Let's look at that full moon, shall we? Good question, Miss Darcy. I believe it's is it Saturday? Let's look. Let's look. For the sake of being a Virgo, carrying out my Virgo mission, my Virgo credibility, let me be as exact as possible. All right. Friday. Hold on, Friday. Let's see what do we have here. It's going to start to kick in on Sunday night, moving into Monday and Tuesday. Late Sunday nights, Monday, Tuesday, Virgo, full moon. And oh, that's really interesting. That's when we also have Mercury direct on the Virgo full moon. How about that? I think that's a really interesting time in terms of being able to glean some insights. Really glean some insights. There's a ruthlessness in some ways with that Virgo moon. Sometimes it's good to be ruthless with oneself. Other times, gentle. I think you need to know when to apply both of those things. All right, let me go back into chat. Let's see where you're at. They are also politicizing the outbreak against Trump, which is nuts. Well, yeah, I mean, it's another, okay. I'm going to give you some insight. I was doing a deep dive around the sign of Aries about 2 weeks ago. Really deep dive because of certain Aries people that have been in my life. And I realized that the nature of Aries is, well, it's not even to not void a conflict, not to the nature, because I've seen people who are Aries, and believe it or not, I've seen some conflict avoidance with these people. But I would say that the nature of Aries is to draw conflict in so that the individual can test itself against the conflict, whether they are conflict avoidant or conflict, that's what I'm looking for, a conflict receptive. It's a very odd thing because I have seen certain areas that are conflict avoidant, but what they draw to them tends to be conflict-based energy. Very conflict-based energy. So things I've seen for a number of Aries people or Aries rising people, that things aren't always easy for them, that they almost set up this field of conflict and challenge so that they can ram ahead. Right? I've seen this again and again and again, which is very different than Libra. And Libra would be kind of more openly conflict avoidant. I think Libra is more openly conflict avoidant. Libra would rather find a win-win. Everybody likes each other. path of least resistance sort of thing. But then when push comes to shove, Libra will ultimately stand up for balance and justice and fairness, and then will circumnavigate or push through the conflict avoidance. So the reason I bring this up is because Trump has Mars on his ascendant in Leo, and Mars, of course, being the ruler of Aries. And to me, that's like, okay, I see it. I see the pattern in play, in that he will draw conflict to him at any stage of his life, wherever he is, whether he is building buildings or he was owning a football team in the USFL. Trump has always been a lightning rod of controversy and conflict, And even his, what's so interesting too, though, right? Because he also has Jupiter in Libra, which is really interesting. And I think he's got Neptune in Libra too, in the conjunction. So he's got these two teachers in his life. He's got Roy Cohn, who was so conflict based. Like Roy Cohn lived for conflict. And then he had what's his name? The power positive thinking guy, Norman Vincent Peale, which is very Libran, very Libran in a lot of ways. So I don't think Trump has two wolves that he's trying to feed inside of him. Like, which wolf is he going to feed? But he's always going to have conflict. He will always draw conflict to him, and as a result of being the president of the United States, will be drawn into the conflict as well. That's the way it is with Mars on the ascendant. You better hope the fucker wins. For the rest of us, right? Because if he doesn't win, then we're all going down with the ship. Basically, that's how this thing works. So I just made that connection because I went through this loop around Aries people and watching, my experience with them and how I just see all this conflict come up, and then it would spill over into my life. I'm like, shit, I don't deal with life that way. That's not my spiritual technology. Even though if I have to, I'll and if I have to offend somebody or speak the truth, I'll do that. But I'm not looking for conflict. No, I was young when I was younger. When I was younger, I liked to piss people off. I have to say, I was how do I say this? A cocky little shit at times when I was younger. But that's what you get with Trump. So I'm saying this in response to Masaki's comment about how they're going after Trump. Shit, that's all they've been doing since he's gotten office is go after Trump, and either politicizing the coronavirus or even perhaps launching the coronavirus into and having the most impact. I find the where coronavirus is happening and seeming to have the most cases. Of course, the first death. By the way, did you catch this? That the first person who died of coronavirus was actually designated as a woman, but wasn't. It was like, I think the first victim of coronavirus was a trans person. Is that interesting? Because Trump called her a woman. It wasn't a woman. They found out later. That's kind of weird shit, right? When the moon is in Gemini, of course, we're going to find that out. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, they politicized everything. He's always going to be in conflict. It's not going to end. If he's in office for another 4 years, more conflict. You better hope, though, at some point somebody fucking wins. Because these stalemates are not very interesting. Right? They're just not interesting at all. Okay. Let's see. Who else? Oh, all right. This is just for fun. This is just a bit of a lark. Okay. Just a bit of a lark. It's a chart that I found. And it's not a highly rated chart. It's a double D chart. And it's Desi Arnaz's chart. He's born on March 2nd. So you know, Desi, Ricky, Lucy. So one of the stories that I heard through in my music business days had to do with one Desi Arnaz, and apparently Desi Arnaz had a voracious sexual appetite. So I decided to look at his chart. I'm like, okay, Sun Mars conjunction, Pisces. Okay, that makes sense. What is that Sun Mars conjunction doing? Trining Pluto and the moon. And the moon. This guy, no Earth at all, by the way. Look at that. Zeros. Oh, he's got Jupiter, my bad. Jupiter in Taurus. So he was a rich cat. He was. He was very rich. Started Desilu Productions. It was a huge production company back in the 60s. They produced. They were producing TV shows like Hogan's Heroes, and they had their own lot, I believe, on the set of Universal Studios. Anyway, so yeah, he's got that Sun Mars conjunction, Pluto Moon conjunction, and the story that sticks out the most is when he would go and play like what the Copa down in Miami. Yeah, that's right. Jasper knows the story. He'd play the Copa in Miami, and he would take speed. I can see this in his chart. He would take speed, and he would line women up, kind of along the outside of his hotel room in the Copa, and one by one they would go in, and Desi, high on his little speed train, would take care of them one after the other. Right, I can kind of see this in his chart now. One of the legendary stories of Desi Arnaz, Machine Gun Desi. And look, he's got, I mean, you can kind of see it too here, right? Venus in Aquarius, Mercury in Aquarius, Uranus in Aquarius, trine Pluto, trine the moon. This is unconventional. It's unconventional. This is not somebody who's going to be tied down in any relationship. I can get that right now. I think Lucille Ball probably just she looked the other way. Looked the other way. He was a money machine. I mean, when they set everything up, man, it was a money machine. Just look the other way. And he has Jupiter. Look at, he's got Jupiter in Taurus, sextile Pluto and the moon. Man, that's money. Very, 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 very wealthy. Not a great dad, though. I would say he probably was not a very good father. And I haven't read anything about, he's probably one of these guys that really loved his kids, but it was like not a very good father. Not with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But I could definitely see the Copa story coming out right there. Okay, let's see what's going on with everybody in Chatlandia. See what's happening. What's going on with you? Let's see. You having a shot of bourbon? Paying respects. Ooh, bourbon. Yeah, there's Carol on it. Okay, let's see. You look a lot like him. Oh, there we go. Probably just another arranged Hollywood marriage anyway. Could be. Could be. Yep, absolutely. Sounds like JFK and Hitler. You know, he's not alone. You know who else used to do shit like that was Tom Jones. Tom Jones was notorious for doing that in Las Vegas. They just line up. They'd line up outside the door, waiting to get serviced by Tom Jones. And apparently, he really damaged Elvira. Remember Elvira? When I was a kid, by the way, I was so into Elvira, looks wise. I'm like, my God, that woman is hot, very hot. I was a big Elvira fan. Anyway, Tom Jones apparently, let's just say he did some damage to her. But I don't think that's, I don't think Desi was. I think Desi might have started the trend, as it were, and the other guys kind of picked up on it. All right, I want to show you a really great. How is everybody doing on this Mercury retrograde thing right now? Are you guys good? Are you having a fun Mercury retrograde? Has shit broken down on you yet? I've had some interesting things happen. The first few days of Mercury retrograde were mind blowers. But this is a really good time to look back in time. Really, really good time to look back in time, at least based on our version of Mercury retrograde and what we know about it. There seems to be some new findings on Mercury retrograde, which maybe I'll get into. Not me personally, other people's other astrological findings. But this has been an interesting Mercury retrograde, and I do like the fact that in Pisces there does have this sense of like the river of time running backwards and being able to look at your life and being able to let go, surrender. So it's an interesting. We're in a really interesting point in time. And I do believe we're also running out of time. That's the other thing. And this has been something I've been saying for a while. It's like the fourth turning. And we're in the winter of our experience. There will be a spring, but we're in the winter of our experience. Again, that's based on the fourth turning. So what's going on with you guys? What's happening with your Mercury retrograde stories? What do we have here? We have played phone tag for a few days. No biggie. Desi Arnaz was related to the Bacardis. I saw his daughter Lucy in the elevator one day visiting the museum downstairs. Mercury retrograde. Yes, things have been broken down. What else do we have here? I'm feeling that. So far, so good. Mercury thing. Maury, you're a Pisces rising. So Mercury retrograde is probably taking place in your 12th house. Let's see. Nothing wrong with good vodka. Careful with too much tonic. Has quinine in it and embalming fluid. Somebody's a serious drinker in the chat room. Billy Blue, everything is breaking. Mercury retro has been like struggling through mud. Well, that's interesting. That is very interesting. Heather said she had a fender bender. My phone acts up. I had my computer die last week and then came back. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Period Lat 9, last cycle, 2024, 2044. My sonic toothbrush broke down. Sonic toothbrush. You got to take care of that. I'm good. All moving forward. You are. Ani is going to be traveling across the country. If I'm not hopefully spilling the beans too much here, but Ani's going to be giving us some live reports from the road when she's out there, as she's touching the soul of America in her very Sagittarian, expansive, forward-moving kind of ways. All right, I'm going to be. I'm going to show you a little. I'll show you a little Mercury retrograde piece. You guys are going to dig this. It's so great. So great. Oh, Buttigieg. Let me talk about his chart first. I'm going to talk about Mayor Robot's chart first, and then I'm going to get into this Mercury retrograde thing that I ran across. You guys are going to love. So fucking funny. All right, hold on. All right, something's happening here. So was somebody getting personally attacked? I got to bail out. Who's getting personally attacked? From those people for being honest about supporting who? Very vice and unfair. I don't know who Bill Weld is. Somebody just sent me a message about being attacked. What's going on in the chat room? Boom. Can we treat people nice in the chat room? Is that possible? Is that possible? I mean, I know we're all adults and grown-ups and stuff, but I hate it when people have to leave. I really do. It's a bummer. Real bummer. So maybe we can be a little more mindful or something so that people don't have to bail. I'm sorry you had to bail. Okay, let's get into Pete Buttigieg. Let's do that. Yeah, let's try to be conscious and mindful a little bit. Like, you take issue with somebody, I don't have a problem with that, but remember to breathe. We're in a pressure cooker right now. We're in we're in the We're in the Instapot. This is the Instapot of our experience. So let's keep the pressure valve off a little bit. You know, you can adjust the pressure in the Instapot. Let's adjust the pressure in the Instapot just a little. Just a little. Okay. All right. Let's look at Mayor Robot's chart. Now, somebody asked me one time, well, how can you do a chart for him when you don't know his time? Well, it's called rectification, and people do it all the time. It's part of what astrologers do. You take a shot at a chart, you look at certain aspects or components in a person's life, and you take a crack at the rising sign. So I have him kind of at the end of Cancer, kind of a Capricorn, with the sun here in the first house at 29 degrees, Venus and Mercury, because everybody knows how smart he is, right in the first house, right? And his father is a professor. So I've got Saturn in the ninth house. And he was overseas and in the army, ninth house, right? Okay. And even with Mars, kind of ingressing a little bit to the ninth. So this is what I have him. Now, he's out of the race now. And one of the things that, I mean, he came out early, he dropped after he won or supposedly stole Iowa. And he ran into the Sanders buzzsaw on the East Coast. And then essentially Joe Biden with the fix being in South Carolina, keeping him in the conversations, thinking of a brokered convention. But Buttigieg is interesting because I think there are probably two things going on with him. Number one, I do think he's sick. He was not well when he was, where was the last stop? Was it Nevada? Was that the last stop? Wherever the last stop, and not South Carolina, wherever the one before that was, dude was not well. And he left the campaign trail to go convalesce. And it looked like, for all intents and purposes, he was showing some COVID symptoms. And that could be the case. There's another theory here that Bloomberg came in and bought him out of the race. So he's got Pluto around his south node, and it doesn't matter if his sun was in the fifth house or the eighth house or the third house, he's still going to have Pluto on his south node. This is a really, really vulnerable time for this guy, Mayor Pete. When I say vulnerable, I'm talking about physically vulnerable. Now, could he be on death's door? Maybe. I mean, with a Pluto South Node conjunction, Saturn kind of around his sun at 29 degrees, it's a critical phase for the dude. Very critical. And one would think that he would have gone all the way through the election just to build up his name and his reputation. That is not the case at all. He's thrown in the towel early. He threw in the towel earlier than Deontay Wilder's ring ban. But there's something going on with this guy, and we saw it a few days ago, and he's off the trail. And now he's out of the race. So one of two things happened, and maybe they both happened. I think somebody inside the Democratic Party at a high level, kind of a Saturnian and Capricornian level with Pluto there, that maybe they pulled a, hey, we're going to Bernie Sanders you kind of moment. But I also think he's unhealthy. I think there's health issues going on because he also has Pluto squaring Saturn in his chart right now. Maybe this guy could be in for the fight of his life. We'll see. He may be up to tomorrow and look right as rain if that's him. But there's something going on with him. Something physically and definitely something with the powers that be. He's getting really hit, right? Saturn square, Saturn Pluto square, Sun on Saturn on the Sun, Pluto on the South Node. Not good for Mayor Robot. He's dropped out of the race like a fly. This is going to be an interesting story to follow in the next 48 hours. He may show up being fine, but he's not fine. I can tell you that right now. He's not fine professionally, and I don't think he's fine physically. That's my take on him in his chart, because we've looked at his chart before. I don't think he has a great chart, by the way. It would have been better for him to stay in the race. He can't. Not with all that tension. Not with all that astrological tension in his chart. That was not going to happen at all. All right. Do we have any feedback from chat at all? I need someone to hold me a hug. Tell me everything's going to be okay. If anyone's really sensitive to me with cancer, I'm just saying. Look. I'm just saying. Look, we all have to get along, right? We all have to get along. So either you have to develop a tougher skin, which I actually advocate getting a tough skin, because you're not going to get through this time without a tough skin. Nope, not going to happen. Not going to happen. You have to have a tough skin, but you also have to have a permeable membrane, right? To have the two. So again, here comes Mr. Libra. Develop a tough skin, permeable membrane, and then realize that, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And somewhere in the middle is the truth. So be it. Okay. All right. I want to show you guys the Mercury retrograde moment, and then we get on out of here. This is funny as shit, Mercury retrograde moment. Here we go. Okay. You guys are going to love this shit right here. You're going to love this. This just happened too. This just happened as well. You're going to love this. All right. Remember, Mercury retrograde. Oprah Winfrey takes fall on stage. What is happening? This is an English language rag. It's a bit of a rag, the Daily Mail. Takes fall on stage. Not falls. Come on, Brits. You invented the damn language. Do it right. During speech about the importance of balance. So Oprah Winfrey, this is such a Mercury retrograde thing. She's 66, by the way. She takes a fall on stage, and she's talking about balance. Where do you guys see this? Hold on, let me go back. You got to hear her. Let me go back. I got to enable the audio in this. This is fucking funny. Hold on. All right, here we go. All right. So she's on stage and she's talking about, of all things, health. Here we go.
Said you have to name it to claim it. So here's my definition of what wellness means to me. This is my definition, not yours, just an idea, because you're going to be defining it for yourself. Wellness to me means all things in balance. And balance doesn't mean all things are equal or at peace at all times.
Whoa.
Wrong shoes.
Should we see that again? This might be like the #1 hit all time on the Mercury retrograde hit parade. And the light gets super, super bright, right? Like it almost bleaches her out just before she falls. Let's do that again.
I said you have to name it to claim it. So here's my definition of what wellness means to me. This is my definition, not yours, just an idea, because you're going to be defining it for yourself. Wellness to me means all things in balance. And balance doesn't mean all things are equal or at peace at all times. Wrong shoes. Said you have to name it to claim it. So here's my definition of what wellness means to me. This is my definition, not yours, just an idea, because you're going to be defining it for yourself. Wellness to me means all things in balance. And balance doesn't mean all things are equal or at peace at all times. Wrong shoes.
So she went back up on stage and she finished her presentation. Now, it is very ironic that the woman is talking about balance and then she falls on her ass. Very, very ironic. And in a lot of ways, quite embarrassing. Very, very embarrassing. And I wonder what the meta message is around that. Because when we think of Oprah, like the people who are in this chat room and a lot of the people that sort of follow this show and some of the work that's gone on looking at some of these people, when we think of Oprah, we think of somebody who really represents one of the more kind of occult levels, one of the more cult expressions of the cult of personality in Hollywood, and not just a cult in the sense that they're practicing a form of occult knowledge. They're also involved in things that are, for many people, either unspeakable or bordering on the unspeakable. And Oprah has been named many, many times in a number of stories and exposés that are under the wire, right below the fold. And for her to have that moment where right when you got to name it to claim it. What a line that is, right? How many times does she use that line? You got to name it to claim it. You got to name it to claim it. I could go into a really bad male joke there, but I'm not going to. But there she is. She's having this moment and she's talking about the importance of balance. She's the high priestess of all things, consciousness, health, you name it. And then she falls on her ass. There's a message there. There is a message there. And I believe this is where the Logos is speaking to us, speaking directly to us. And some people might say that that was an unfortunate fall. Some people are glad she's okay. Some people say that that's not funny. You shouldn't be taking pleasure in other people's pratfalls. But I see it as the Logos speaking to us through that moment. And that's giving us a sign. That's giving us a sign that the people who have helped create and control the narrative of our world are about to take a fall. That's how I interpret that. That's how I interpret that in their finest moment, in their peak. And you can even listen to the music. And the music is starting to like the lights getting brighter, right? It's like that moment is showtime for Oprah. The lights getting brighter, the music is starting to hit this crescendo, and boom, she hits the deck. And there's nothing to trip over. She's wearing heels. She's probably worn those heels dozens of times. Or if not those heels, she's worn heels like those. What happened in that moment? What happened in that moment? She was top heavy. That's what happened. I'm not talking about top heavy here. She was top heavy up here. And that's what took her down. To me, it's a very interesting meta moment. That is a meta moment. And that is probably the greatest sync in the Mercury retrograde hit parade I've ever seen up to this date. All right, let's check in with you guys in chat. See what's going on in Chatlandia. Let's see what we got. Stedman is her beard. Looked like Oprah got hit. Me too, Robert. She knows it too. Old butt of Harvey. Brittany broke her foot the other day as well. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. What else we have? Looked like Oprah got hit. That was a moment, right? That was a total freaking moment. That is a total freaking moment. The music seemed to change almost, right. Colleen picked up on that. Colleen totally picked up on that. Oprah Astrology, born January 29, 1954. Yep. Miss Aquarius. Definitely Miss Aquarius. Stedman. Have you ever seen Stedman Graham and Eric Holder in the same room together, by the way? Have you ever seen them together in the same room? When you get a chance, look at here. Why don't I just do it? I can just bring it up here for you. No need for you to go scurrying. I'm a full service Sunday night astrology, come conspiracy, come truth, come humor, internet show. So let's do this. Let's look at them. I always, to me, it was like, what the hell is going on here? Oh, these are all these different twins, these twin material guys. Let me find a better one. I'll show you this one because I popped it up. But there are some where they look exactly alike. And what's weird is that they're both from Chicago. Now they look a little different there, right? They look a little different there, but they also look very similar. There are some that are just like totally freaking spot on. Let me see if I can find another one. Oh, this is a good one right here. Now, I'm not saying that they're the same dude. I'm not. But come on. Come on. Look at that. I mean, this is like, that's about as close as it gets. I mean, the chins are just a little bit different. A little bit different. And by the way, has anybody seen Stedman Graham lately? Like, I remember seeing a bunch of pictures with him and Oprah a long time ago, and then those went away. And all you saw was like Oprah and Gail and Oprah and Gail. But that's a freaky kind of Gemini moon comparison with Stedman Graham and Eric Holder. I got one more piece of business for everybody tonight, and it is my piece of business. So let me go here. All right. You throw this up here. Okay, I have a Mercury retrograde 72-hour reading special going on right now. So this is a turn back the clock reading special. So I've gone back to my 2012 prices for an hour reading. So you get a 60-minute Mercury retrograde session that's happening until Tuesday morning. Some of you are taking advantage of this, by the way. And then if you're into just doing a single focus deep dive with a half hour, that's $66. That's less than what I obviously charge now. So it's a turn back the clock time, turn back your own personal evolutionary clock, and turn back the astrological clock. Back to the good old days of 2012 and 2013, and was about ready to hit Gaia TV. So you can go there and take advantage of that over my website. That goes away on Tuesday morning. And there you go. If you'd like to support this show, obviously you can subscribe, and there'll be information in the show page as well. Okay. All right. I think we had a pretty good over 90 minutes. Over 90 minutes. I think it's quality content, good audience participation, and of course, Jasper, the set record. Let me check in the chat, Nadia, one more time before I say goodnight. Let's see what we have here. Sorry, the mouse isn't much like each other. I really like each other. Come on now. He's saying more about Virgos. Yes. Your regular rate is actually expanding for me. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. There's some people, do you know how much Steve Judd charges for a reading? Steve Judd charges like $400. You know how much Leo King charges for a reading? The Leo King charges almost $300 for a reading. You know how much Heather, lovely Heather, Astrology with Heather, she charges more than I do, and I was Heather's teacher. God bless her. And if any of these people can get the money that they're asking for with their readings, God bless them. Right? So let's keep spending in perspective. And I've been at this point for a very long time. And there are people who say, well, you should raise your rates. You should raise your rates. I don't really want to raise my rates. I'm fine with where I'm at. And I'm fine with how much these experiences cost, especially in relationship to somebody else. And I'm sure you could go out and get $100 reading somewhere, and it might be fine. It might not be fine. You pay for what you get sometimes, right? I mean, that's true. Sometimes you get, it's like you want to go out and get $100 reading. Maybe you'll get $100 reading. Maybe you'll luck out. Maybe you'll luck out and you get a $200 reading for $100. I don't know. That's going to be all subjective and, what matters to you. But as far as me and what I normally charge in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of right there and below a lot of other people who have high profiles in astrology. Just saying. Question was about logos. It's a much bigger question. Maybe we can conquer that or attempt to dive into that next week when we have more time. It deserves more than a 5-minute description at the very least. I'll be back on Tuesday with 15 Minutes of Flame. The Crimmies will be joining me this Friday. If you didn't see last Friday's show, it's right here in this show page with my buddies, Rock Castaldo and Glenn Streeter. Really good show. Really great tips about what you need around your house. Also, some of the spiritual technologies that are available to you, health technologies that are available to you. Check that out. We got the Crimmies on Friday. And then the following Friday on the Forecast, Alex Kazemi, the author of Pop Magic, and that's magic with an Magick. And then after that, it's going to be Steve Mercer bringing in fresh blood into the Friday Fargasm. But of course, Tuesday through Thursday at roughly 8:45 a.m. Central Standard Time, 15 Minutes of Flame, your morning cup of reality. All right, I love you all, and use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thank you for being a part of tonight's show, and Jasper, thanks you as well. Have a good evening.